guys. Welcome to the Cultivated Life podcast. I am so glad you're joining us. We have a special guest with us today, Ashley Shaffer. But before we jump into that, let me just remind you, the reason that Sharon and I do what we do is because we want to raise up a generation that knows God. You can find out more about Sharon and I, our work, our books, the podcast, teaching, all of that at thecultivatedlifeministries.com. So you can track us there. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to like, I need you to share, I need you to hit all the good buttons. No bad buttons are allowed to be hit during this podcast.
No bad buttons.
No bad buttons, only the good ones. And then leave a comment, but only good comments like, I like your hair, this is a good comment, that was a brilliant idea, this is the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Okay, those are the comments you're allowed to leave right there, all right? Okay. So, Ashley Shaffer, welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I feel like I'm honored to be here. I'm a big fan of the Cultivated Life. I don't have the full series of the Cultivated Life series.
You probably don't want the full series.
Which would be a good birthday or Christmas gift. But I have read the Fivefold Frustrations.
Yes, Fivefold Frustrations.
I've read, haven't finished yet, but started a few months ago, the How to Build Anything.
How to Build Anything, the Nehemiah strategy.
Yep.
Yes.
And then Pastor Sharon's kids one.
Oh, yes. Through the Bible, the Journey Through the Bible.
Journey Through the Bible.
Journey Through the Bible.
I keep that one on my end table, full disclosure. I keep that one on my end table next to my actual full Bible. And just because here, full disclosure here, right? I, studied the Bible, went to ministry school, went to school to be a pastor. But even in ministry school, we studied things in groupings, right? Like synoptic gospels and right. So I never actually studied the Bible in its entirety from beginning to end, in order. And so even now, a lot of times when I'm diving into the Bible, I will forget where we are at in the timeline of the Bible. And I find that my children's Bible or what Pastor Sharon wrote to be very helpful to then quickly leaf open and go, yep, I know where we're at. Right.
When I first started pastoring, one of my favorite Bibles was the Picture Bible. And it's a Bible written like in cartoon form with the little squares and the pictures.
Yep.
Because there'd be so many times when I first started pastoring, it's like, okay, I'm lost. Where am I at?
Yeah.
And so I would get my Picture Bible and I would find it and I would read the cartoon version.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
Hey, it got me to where I am today, wherever that's at. I'm not saying that's very far, but it's got me somewhere.
Hey, so, I'm just saying, I love that one and I utilize it a lot, even though I'm not the intended audience. I find it to be very helpful.
I love that. So for those of you that might be interested in purchasing any of our books, you can find those at the cultivatedlifeministries.com or on Amazon. You can find them all there. So you have been involved in ministry in our city and then for a little while in the national ministry.
Yeah.
But for many years, you're a boy mom.
I'm a boy. Do I have a black and blue eye somewhere? Yes, I'm a boy mom.
So you've got 3 boys and a husband, which may mean you have 4 boys, because that's what my wife always says. She said, I thought I got 3 boys and a husband, but really I just got 4 boys.
Yes, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of who Ashley is and a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So on the family front, which I always say is my first and favorite ministry, also the hardest ministry I serve by a long shot. Yeah. I'm like, I can coach and teach and equip ministries all day long. But if the kids in my house don't start listening to me when I say something, right?
Yes.
Story for another day. Yeah. My husband and I started dating when we were in youth group. Our home church has been Calvary Assembly of God for ages. We both, grew up in the church there. And my husband and I were best of friends for ages. And then one day my husband was like, we should date. And I was like, that's a really bad idea.
We're friends.
Yes.
And then your husband comes
Best
up with this
friends.
wacky idea that
he's like, we should
since
date.
we like each other,
yeah, we're really good friends. We should commit our lives to one another, And I was like, that's a really terrible idea. And so he kept asking, and we were so young, right?
Yes.
And I knew I was going to be called into full-time nonprofit ministry at some point in my life. And so, eventually my husband said, I'm not going to keep asking you. I'm just going to let you know that I'm telling people, you are my girlfriend. So
You're on alert.
Yeah. He was like, what you're behaving is different than what you are telling people. And we actually are dating. You just haven't agreed to it yet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay.
So this was before Facebook?
Oh, yeah.
And he would have gone in, if it were in Facebook, he would have then clicked in a relationship.
Yeah, he would have defined the relationship.
And on your page, it's like, no relationship.
No
It's
relationship.
Like, what's going on with this story?
What's going on here? Exactly. So, yeah, that's kind of on the personal front. And yeah, I always say I have 3 sons and a trophy husband, and thank God for my husband. Like, he's an incredibly gifted leader in our family and in our home. And it's just a lot of fun. So, yeah, we've been dating still for, I don't know, a lot of years, 23 years now, I think.
Well, that's awesome that you're still dating.
Yes.
Because it's always a problem when you stop dating.
I agree.
But let me tell you, your husband seems to be, and I've only met him a few times and spent a little bit of time with him, but he seems to be the nicest guy. But here's the one thing, he's got the greatest smile. I wish I had half of his smile.
Oh, that's
Every time I see him, he's got this smile that is so winsome. It's like, I like that guy.
He does.
I don't really know him, but I like that guy.
Smile.
So
he does have a great smile, and he's a lot of fun. So yeah, and then my entry into ministry, I went to ministry school. Actually, somebody basically paid for both my husband and I to go through ministry school.
Wow.
She was an evangelist at our church. Her husband passed away. She used her giving as a legacy gift to basically create a scholarship fund for kids who couldn't afford to go through ministry school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So the world that you're in, you've actually lived.
Yeah, I guess I haven't really made that full connection until this moment.
Wow.
Yes. But
it's like you've been on the receiving end of a legacy gift.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So went through ministry school, and it was one of those situations where I kind of laid my fleece out before the Lord of going like, Lord, I know I'm not going to make a huge living working in ministry. And so like, if you want me to be equipped, please send me to school and provide the way, right? Yeah. My mom helped a little, but truly this scholarship was really what paid the bulk of my funds to get there. And then another family, actually, now that I'm making this full connection, had a grandmother who was a teacher, loved education. They are still thriving here in Northwest Ohio today, a scholarship foundation, and they set funds aside to help kids finish their education. I had a connection there, and they said, typically we give to colleges, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, I understand.
Real schools, not ministry schools. Yeah, that's not a real school.
It's not, you're not going to, outside of ministry, you don't really have anything outside of ministry school degree, right? So I thought, man, I probably don't fit the candidacy. I waited in my car. I saw that they had called to give me a response after my interview, and they said, hey, we typically don't give to these. Hey, I totally understand. No problem. They said, however, we would like to double your scholarship because we're really excited for you to be able to have the opportunity to, understand the Word of God and
that's huge.
And disciple people. So yeah, God truly paved a way there. Outside of ministry school, I started working at my church. The long story short there is that I was doing youth and outreach. And my parents my parents battled a terminal illness when I was a kid. My dad passed away at a very young age. He was 38 when he passed away. I was 12. And so in regards to that, we, didn't have a ton of money to give away, but I saw that my parents lived very generously and very sacrificially. My parents were very engaged in foster care. And, we were always opening up our home for things and just giving of what we had. So even though generosity wasn't filled with a check with a bunch of zeros behind it, I did see that my parents were very philanthropic in what God had given. That they kind of understood this concept, right? That they weren't owners of anything, that they were stewards. And so, I was working at my church, and my parents always had me plugged in growing up, serving meals at Cherry Street Mission, that kind of thing, down at Vision Kitchen, all sorts of things, just always serving. And I always felt drawn to poverty ministry. And poverty ministry, that has a lot of meanings, right? I think a lot of times we can think poverty ministry is just financial poverty, right? Like urban poverty-stricken areas.
We have a tendency, I think, to tie poverty only to finances.
Absolutely.
And so then all the other poverties kind of get lost in the cracks.
In that,
because we're focused on that one element. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and yet I did kind of have this knack and hunger for this kind of financial poverty space. And so I was working at my church. They opened up a job for me full time, which I was like, this is the goal. This is the dream, right? I was working in youth and outreach and doing all this outreach evangelism ministry. My boyfriend at the time, kind of like rigged this U-Haul machine to open up. We'd have a stage. We do these black ministries and bring the speakers and hot dogs and watermelons and, all the things, and just do these huge block parties, evangelism, outreach kind of things. And I really felt that like the Lord was just kind of like knocking on my door as I was leading this outreach portion in our church in the youth ministry and going like, that's super sexy, but nobody's life is being changed. Like, you've got the numbers, and it's super cute to stand up in front of your church and say like, good for you. You had, 18 new commitments of the same 18 people who've been doing it every single weekend all summer.
Because the hot dogs are really good and the watermelon's wonderful.
We make a mean hot dog. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so I really just kind of had a change of heart. And at that same time, when they opened that position for me, I really felt like the Lord was saying, this isn't it. And I was like, well, that's really confusing. At that time, I reached out to Cherry Street Mission. They were hiring, and I started in an administrative role. And I still remember to this day working in that administrative role. And one of our directors of development had come up to me, and I just, more than anything, I was like, I just want to serve. Like, I want this to be my teaching hospital. I want to be with the people, I want to be, and the Lord expanding my heart to know that poverty wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. It was physical. Right. It was also financial. Right. But poverty was so much deeper than just financial.
Well, in that environment, you get exposed to all of the poverties.
All of the poverties.
All the relational, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. I mean, you just keep making the list of all the holes in people's lives.
The real depth of like the human condition. Yeah. Right. Like we always kind of said we worked within 50 feet inside of Hell's Gates. Wow. And I think anytime you're working in the human condition, that is true. Right. But it was the scarlet letter in a lot of ways of people in our society who didn't fit into other normal common spaces. And so it was great exposure, and I just couldn't wait to like go out and serve and do the work, do ministry. And our development director at the time, Rodney Schuster, who's now the president of Catholic Charities, he was like, Ashley, we feel like you would be a great fit on the development team. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. And I was just like, Rodney, I really appreciate that. Like, I want to do real ministry, and he was like, okay, well, read this book. It was called The Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen.
Great book, by the way. And if you're interested in a deeper depth of what it means to be generous and to understand the spirituality in what it means to give, and the backside, which is the fundraising side. But
absolutely.
Henry Nouwen, he's got a lot of great books.
I love all things Henry Nouwen. The other great book there is A Treasure Principle. Yes. Which is Randy Alcorn, right? Like we all love Randy Alcorn. Those two. So I read that book that day, and it was like my heart broke out in hives, right? And it was something that I understood that I never saw myself as somebody who could get out there and ask for money. I was the kid that like, I didn't participate in Girl Scouts because it meant you had to sell Girl Scout cookies. And those are actually very easy to sell.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Yes, they are.
Those speak for themselves. But I kind of had this heart transition in reading these books that I started to understand that fundraising really wasn't just this necessary evil. It wasn't like we have to fundraise over here so we can fund the real ministry over here. That it's actually, fundraising is actually discipling people in their giving. Yes. Right? And there are more scriptures. I shouldn't say more because I'm sitting across from somebody who can fact check me here. But there are, over 2,000 scriptures, I think.
4,450 scriptures.
There you go.
That deal with money,
scriptures that talk about stewardship, wealth, giving.
The good, the bad, and the ugly of money.
Absolutely,
because it's all there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so much of this, really launched my journey into what, in the secular term, we would call fundraising. Right. I worked at Cherry Street Mission, then moved to the Pregnancy Center. From there, worked at a national pro-abundant life organization and handled a large portion of the country. And then felt called to, I really missed Northwest Ohio. Yeah. I mean, we're probably part of the same sick population. Before I traveled, my territory was everywhere east of the Mississippi. Before I really traveled throughout the Midwest and just the eastern portion of the country, I really was like, Northwest Ohio is the best place in the world. All right. Then, and I had a good amount of travel under my belt. Once I was leaving consistently, Northwest Ohio was like, Northwest Ohio is not the best place in the world. There's better economy. There are better, infrastructure, better weather for sure.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But even then, like, I love Northwest Ohio. I still believe it is the best place in the world because we have the best people. Like, we have the best people.
Well, and for you and I that are in the gospel ministry, we have job security.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we do.
Because there's always somebody going to hell.
There's always, yes.
So anyway,
Yes.
but you're right. Sharon and I, being from the South, she was raised in Louisiana, I was raised in Louisville, Kentucky. So we always felt that pull to the South, and God
they have
brought
better
us to
food
the
in
North.
the South. Like, let's be honest
This is
about
true.
that. When people
This
come
is
to
true.
Toledo and they say, give me the Toledo food, and I'm like, it's a hot dog.
It's all we got.
Hot dog.
That's it. Sorry, that's all we
Really
got.
good hot dogs.
It's
but
a good one, but yeah, that's all we got. But when we came here, we were so dissatisfied because we didn't know why we were here. And then it took years for us to realize what we loved about this place. And our kids love this place. And so we never thought we'd die here. Yeah, we're going to die here. They're going to take my ashes after they cremate me, and they're going to throw them out in the backyard and be like, yeah, he's here forever now.
Yes, and then we actually become part of the landscape.
Part of the landscape,
Northwest
exactly.
Ohio. That's the goal here. Like, that is my dream. I'm like, I want my ashes. I agree. I couldn't agree more. So yeah, living in Northwest Ohio, and so I really miss being present in my community. And honestly, just rubbing it across, elbows with people like you and other ministry leaders, like, that is so unique to Northwest Ohio. I would go to these other regions and go, the churches don't work all that well together, and nonprofits. And I was like, man, I'm crazy, because in Northwest Ohio, I'm sure that happens, but like, we are one team.
We have a very unique setting, and Grant and I will go into other communities and we'll talk about this stuff with other pastor friends or people, and they look at us like, you do what?
Yeah.
You support each other's churches, you support each other's ministries. You
build stages for other people to go on, and you open up doors for people that aren't self-serving to yourself, and you're like, I know it's this wild thing called the gospel that changed my life.
Exactly, the kingdom of God, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. So then, and Pastor Perry, you were super essential in launching Mission Increase here in Northwest Ohio.
It's
through
been
Mission
a big
Increase,
part of my heart. Yeah.
Through Mission Increase, we now serve here locally about 85 ministries and ministry leaders. And so I gave you a very, very long answer as to my.
Tell us a little bit about what Mission Increase does.
Sure.
The short answer, not that other answer.
Not the 15-minute long version of how
But if you want to find Mission Increase, where can people go to find Mission Increase?
So you can go to missionincrease.org. Our community tab is under there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so we, Mission Increase, we teach, equip ministries, churches, donors, nonprofits to maximize collective kingdom impact so that more lives are transformed for Jesus. And we do that through teaching financial, biblical generosity principles. Gotcha. Essentially, we train ministries on how to become sustainable.
Yes, and that is a huge challenge.
Absolutely.
So when I first started stepping into the nonprofit world, of course, the church world kind of gets there too. But I mean, when I say the church world, the I don't know how else to say, because I struggle with this language myself.
Sure.
Because we're all the church world. But when you separate the collective body, Sunday morning church world, as opposed to the nonprofit world, I said what I see happening, and this was an early revelation, is somebody gets a vision and they get a big plan and they go get their 501c3, and then they realize, oops, we need money.
Yes.
Vision gets pushed to the back seat, or sometimes just thrown in the trunk like an old suitcase.
Yeah,
and
you're
now
absolutely
money gets in the driver's seat, and money drives everything, because we have to have one more silent auction. We have to have another golf outing. We need to have a dinner. We need to have a fundraiser. And it's like, so then you get in the hamster wheel of fundraising.
Absolutely.
And never get to really fulfill your vision. Your job is to keep money in the back seat, vision in the front seat, and help them understand how to sustain their ministry, to keep it moving
You're
forward.
spot on.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. I love that. Well, yes, working with One Voice Foundation, I was really, for a few years, we worked really hard to get this here.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you're taking the lead on this.
And you did the heavy lifting.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, but yes, I was a part of it, and I loved it. I think Mission Increase is one of the greatest things going nationally that can really help churches and ministries go forward, and that's really important.
I agree.
For the reasons I just stated. So what are some creative ways that you see people missing the opportunity to give, but when they get to the end of their checkbook, they're like, I don't have any more to give?
Sure. Well, a very common misconception is that most of the time when we show up someplace to give, hopefully first our church body, our faith community,
Yes.
right? And when we show up to these places to give, we think, what kind of income do I have to give from, right? But and I have a graph that I'd be happy to share with you, but it really is interesting because a lot of that mindset comes from most of us start with income and not wealth, right? We start with a paycheck.
Yes.
Right. And so I have so much money coming in and I have so much money going out. And then we call that a budget. And we try to get that balanced as best as we can. Right. And hopefully towards the end of our life, we have more, coming in than we have going out. And but something very unique happens where, when you're on the trajectory of growth, that wealth really kind of starts to snowball. Right? Slowly over time. You invest into your 401k and it starts to kind of create this rolling process of, interest and growing and growing. If we own a business, the same is true. It starts to grow. A life insurance policy, right? But we still have this mindset that we started when we were maybe young and got our first job of, I only have to give of what came in this month.
Right.
Right? But a lot of us, in fact, statistically, about 70% of us, between 60 and 70% of us have graduated from that space in our life. But we still think,
yes,
what can I
our
give
mind
from
is
what?
Still stuck.
Yeah, and our income.
Yes.
And so we ask the question, what of my income can I give from? The better question is, what has God given me to steward in my entirety of my income and my wealth?
Looking past your paycheck.
Past my paycheck, past my income, right? Where as you grow older, your income is significantly less in comparison to your wealth, right? So we call that the 90-10 rule, right? 90% of people give from the 10% of their income every month, right? Or even annually.
So I want you to say that again because I think that's really important.
Sure.
90% of people's wealth.
90% of people, what they give from comes from only about 10% of what they actually own, and that would be their income.
Because 10% is their income.
Yes.
So people own a lot more than they think.
Yes.
Or they have to steward a lot more than they realize.
But we're really only thinking of this tiny little piece of the pie, of the 10% that we call income.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
However, the other 90% of our wealth, and yes, you articulated that better than I did, the 90%, we really have an opportunity to give of as well. And so there's a ton of opportunity to give in creative ways that people haven't maybe thought of. So just a few off of the top, I made a list so I wouldn't forget any.
Yeah.
Real estate, land, right? Property.
So, okay, let's think about that. You get your first house. I mean, your value and your value of the house and what you owe on the house are pretty much neck and neck. But then by the time you get to your third or fourth house, what you owe on the house and the value of the house.
Exactly.
So now if you have a $300,000 house, but you owe $100,000 because you've been upgrading and stewarding wisely, now you've got $200,000 of equity,
which
is wealth, but not realized wealth because you don't
may
realize
only be thinking about your income to give from.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay, so real estate. Yeah, that's
so real estate, land, privately held businesses. Right.
Yeah.
We just had a gentleman last year donate a retirement business that he owned, a retirement community.
Wow.
Appreciated stock, of course, crypto, which is, fairly
Crypto's
new in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's a big one because some of these people bought in, when it was pennies. Yeah. And now all of a sudden it's not pennies.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to put a dollar as to what it was on today, but it was worth a lot more today than it was 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Right. Life insurance policies. Yeah. Right. That's oftentimes people invest into a life insurance policy and then maybe you don't need it. They outgrow it. They mature beyond it. And they have more sustainable way of making income.
And it would be as simple as changing the beneficiary.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's one document with your agent that says, I want to change the beneficiary to this ministry or to my church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So life insurance policies, equipment and inventory, depending on what kind of line of work you're in, equipment. Here's a funny story. The larger organization that I work for, National Christian Foundation, I think it was something around like 500 cows was donated to a ministry. And I know somebody I work with, he's like, and so there it was, taking a picture, because legally we have to take a picture. Almost anything that has value, that is marketable, right? That has marketable value. We're not talking about your great Aunt Sandy's, leftovers in her basement.
Yes.
I'm sure there are places that would love that, but that doesn't transfer to a great amount that can often is worth the investment. Estate planning, assets, all sorts of things.
Yeah, when you talk about estate planning, I've always had this idea. So when Sharon and I wrote our estate plan, we wrote in 10% right off the top of whatever we own when we dead and gone, and they put us in the box and ate the potato salad and talked about who the new pastor is going to be. That's because
you sound a little too excited about this.
But 10%.
Yeah.
First, I called it the eternal tithe.
Yes.
It's going to go straight to the church.
And let me say, I would even go one step further to say, I think sometimes we constrain what God wants to give through us when we only think about the 10%. That's not to say we shouldn't. We absolutely should. But oftentimes we start our giving journey, our personal journey like this, right? And we start to think that maybe we think it's all ours, right? Like, I worked hard for this. I deserve this, right? That's called entitlement, right? Then we start to slowly kind of realize, okay, I might be an obligated giver. I might begrudgingly give to my church. We know we have some of those, right?
Of
like
course.
Everywhere.
Of course.
We'll still take the gift.
You better believe
we'll still put it. We will
Even
still
if you're
put
mad
it
about it. We'll take mad money too.
Absolutely. You may be, I tell people if 10% is too hard for you to start with 1, start with 2, start with 3. Make the standard 10, right?
So for years, here's something I played around with. I don't want you to lose your thought because I know where you're going. I think I know where you're going, and I don't want you to lose that thought. But for years, I've told new givers, same thing, start low, start with 1, 2%. But if you want to jump in the deep into the pool and start with 10%, track your giving for 90 days. If at the end of 90 days you're worse off, I'll make sure the church gives you all your money back.
That's like the Aldi twice as best guarantee is what you're doing.
Is that what Aldi's does?
Yeah.
I'm a Walmart guy. I don't know about that Aldi side of the road, but I know that Walmart
the other side of the tracks.
But yes, I like to challenge people to start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
Yeah.
And absolutely start with your church. The church is the most powerful entity in this planet to shift and shape culture.
Yes.
Right. We are the hands and feet of Jesus. Absolutely start with your church, be giving to your church. Right. And I like when it comes to giving, because a lot of people will go, oh, should I give to my church? Should I give to parachurch money? I usually say always. And the Bible tells us to start with our faith body, with our faith community, right? I like to think about the church and parachurch ministry like the special forces and general forces, right? Like until you've graduated from the general forces of like really understanding, don't graduate then to the special forces yet. Like you need to have a great understanding.
That's a great concept.
Of your word, what the Bible speaks to stewardship and generosity, how you should be living out those values. And that place equipped to disciple you is your church, right? And so, but oftentimes, and I'm so thankful, I don't take this lightly, but God, I think, has just positioned me and wired me uniquely to be able to sit across from high capacity people who give extravagantly more than their 10%.
Yes.
Right. And they are doing incredible things to the kingdom of God. And I thank God every day that they didn't go, here's my 10%, I'm moving on. Right? Yeah. Like they have made a lifestyle of going, I have prayerfully decided when enough is enough. And I tell everybody that is the question only you, your family, your spouse, or you individually and personally can determine between you and the Lord. Right? Yeah. The question is not, God, what can I give to you? What can I give back to you? I think the more spiritually mature question is, God, what would you have me keep for myself? Because this is all yours.
Flip the script.
Lord, this is all yours.
How much should I give? Let's figure out how much I should keep.
Yeah.
And then we'll give everything else.
Yeah.
10% is the baseline is what I teach. 10% is the baseline. And then after that, you have offerings and then you have alms.
Yep.
Right? Which is your charitable giving, offering and then charitable giving. So But I love that flipping the script of saying it's not how much do I give, but how much should I keep, and then we'll get rid of everything else.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a good principle. And that's a great way to pray about it too.
Yes.
It's a great
Lord,
way to
you've
pray about
uniquely positioned me. You have certain passions and desires on my
Yeah.
heart. What are you doing, saying, speaking to us that you would have us use to advance your kingdom?
Yeah.
Because it's not how do we make the Shaffer, household bigger, broader, travel more, have more experiences. Those things are all great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And we even see that God doesn't necessarily cast down on people who are of wealth. Right. He uses wealthy people. Look at King David. Right, to reach out to other wealthy people in God's unique way.
Yeah.
But that really is a personal decision between you and the Lord to go, Lord, where would you have me
And that's the
position?
challenge of setting number goals for everybody.
Yes.
Because then you have equal giving, but not equal sacrifice.
Yes.
Because if you go back to the story of the lady that brought the 2 coins.
The widow's mite.
That was not equal giving to the people who were before her or after her, but it was a greater sacrifice. And I think that's the challenge that we have to wrestle with.
Yes.
Is not, am I giving what others are giving? The question is, am I giving what God's called me to give?
You are spot on.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's where we go. We have so much opportunities to live significant lives of surrender. That's what we are all called to, right? To live lives of surrender. Lord, my time, my talent, my treasure, my testimony, it is all yours. I want my finances to reflect the testimony in my own life.
Yes.
Lord, lead me to where you would have me and how much you would have me.
So
give.
you're talking about impact now. Okay. So I think the thing that people may not understand or that people may not quite be able to wrap their brain around is because that we don't think, not that they're not smart, but we don't think in these terms.
Sure, yeah.
How do we balance what is kingdom impact and then how that relates to the tax deduction and the benefit that can come to us
Sure.
through that? Because if you only think, well, I'm just giving because I need my tax deduction.
Sure.
Well, okay, that's not a bad motive, but it's not the purest motive.
Sure. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just rambling around here trying to unscramble my own question.
Sure. No, it's a great question. And I certainly don't want to over spiritualize it. There are often kind of 2 things that we think about this space, right? We think about the headspace of the knowledge of tax strategies, being incredibly efficient in our giving to make sure that it is the most beneficial both for the kingdom, but also for ourselves. I don't meet a lot of people who are like, I want to give more to taxes. Right? Especially if you are a spirit-filled believer.
Yeah.
Most people I get across them are like, hey,
Yeah.
I understand that the sidewalks are necessary and that I want solid teachers and I want these things are not bad things, right? These are good things. And the Bible even teaches us to give to Caesar what is Caesar's, right? But beyond that, especially when you get into a higher giving range in the highest tax bracket, you can get really strategic in how to give in a way that makes the most sense. So we talk about the head strategy, right?
Right.
At National Christian Foundation, we have some of the greatest strategists in the country that work through a lot of these complex strategies. The term that we use for it is gift economics.
Gift economics. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Where we really make sense and we will give you an
Yes.
honest assessment back to go, hey, from a tax standpoint, I don't know that it would make sense to give your dog to the church.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much.
The tax rate up there, not very high. More debt than income.
And thank you for mentioning that because we don't do dogs. We don't baptize them.
We want to
and
just
we
say
don't
that
receive
here.
them in the offering.
Yes, but if you do have 500 cows
If you
that you want to get processed,
Yes.
interestingly enough, 500 cows is like $100,000. I can figure out a way to bring in 500 cows creatively, right?
Exactly.
I have a way for $100,000 to help build the kingdom beyond just
trust me that we can figure that one out.
redeeming the golden calf there,
Yes.
and so I'm sorry, I get so excited about these things.
This is awesome though. But I think this is the thing that people don't have the opportunity to process.
Sure. And if we come from families that maybe haven't had to work through creative strategies on how to give before, sometimes we feel a little bit confused or maybe aren't aware of the opportunities. Man, I own this small family business. I've never, well, now it might be worth $5 million over the last 10 or 15 years, right? I had a family a few years ago who called. They'd been giving to an organization that I had been working for. And they said, Ashley, we have dedicated our lives to building these retirement communities. And they specialized with memory care. And so they had 3 different facilities, beautiful facilities out in Maryland. We said, we don't come from families that were wealthy. We're first-time business owners. We know a lot of these people, right? First-time business owners, built this baby, pulled up my bootstraps and went to work, right? And so they said, we're a little bit ashamed to ask, but we would like to give more than just the money we have. Typically, they were giving about $10,000 a year, would write a check every year. And I said, have you ever thought about some creative ways to give of what God has put in your hands outside of just the wealth or the income that you have, right? And so, this took a series of several months of just determining what made the most sense. But essentially, they donated 90% of their estate. Do you want to take a stab at how much that was worth?
Well, 3 facilities, I can't even imagine. It's got to be in the millions.
$15 million.
Yeah. Oh,
15
my
million,
goodness.
right?
Wow.
They were giving $10,000, and they
so
said
they
to
went
me,
from a $10,000 yearly gift to a one-time $15 million gift. They
wrapped it into an endowment,
realized.
Right? They wrapped it into an endowment, gifted it to 3 of their favorite charities.
But
ours being one of them.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And so, and interestingly, right? Like you would think, it was a huge, huge blessing to the ministry that I worked for, and just an incredible couple. But in having them on the other side of the line and the other side of the transaction, they felt like it was one of the most meaningful impacts they could ever make in their life, because they've been caring for this end of life space so well through the heart of God. Yeah. And they said, but we've always had a huge draw to the beginning of life and the sanctity of human life on the other end. And outside of giving $10,000 a year, we haven't been able to plug into our pregnancy center. We've been busy building this business. And so, they left a chunk aside to help their grandkids finish college. Sure. But what
a joy it must have been for them to go home and sit in the chair that night. And think, wow, we just changed the world for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So recently, I was made aware of an older lady who just her whole life loved jewelry, had a lot of jewelry. And so she was like, you know what, I don't wear it anymore. I don't need it anymore. She took it and she said, I would like to give this because I think it's probably worth $400 or $500. And I really would like to give this. And so they brought in, they connected her with somebody that understood gold, and they got out the little eye thing and looked at all of it, and they're like, it's going to be worth more than $400 to $500. Are you sure you want to give it? And she's like, yeah. They said, well, it's going to be worth more. And she said, $800. And they're like, maybe a little bit more. And she said, no way, $1,000. It was worth $12,500.
Wow.
In gold, just raw gold, not the working, just if they just melted it all down. She was so blown away that she was able to give what she thought was going to be a $500 gift became a $12,500 gift. Yeah. Because she just had this stuff laying in her drawer that she never thought about.
I think that's why the Widow's Mite story is so important. And I always love to draw more attention to that story than maybe other stories that we have personally about generosity, because I think sometimes we use this word generosity, and in our small, human mindset, what we mean, whether intentionally or not, when we think, wow, that was a really generous gift, we think that had a lot of zeros behind it, right? I know, and I made that mistake too. I one time had thanked a giver for another ministry I was working at, and I said, wow, thank you for being so generous. And they said, Ashley, I feel bad when you say that because that's not generous for us. And I thought, wow.
Well, look generous to you.
What that was generous for me.
Yeah.
Right? That would be a painful gift for me. Yeah, right? Exactly. That would hurt.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for them. Right?
So now, since you mentioned that, how do people discern what they number one, where their heart's calling them to, and how much they should give. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm a giver. I'm coming to Ashley, and I'm like, okay, I feel like we need to give, and I mention a number, and you're like, oh, that's really generous. But then I'm sitting over here like, no, that's not that generous. I mean, I've got 6 more zeros somewhere in some bank account or in some 401.
Sure.
How do I then discern this is what I need to give and this is where I need to give it?
Sure. I think for some people, it's a short, succinct walk with the Holy Spirit, right? When we talk about that head, and the other piece of that is the heart, right?
So that's what I'm saying is you talked about the head, but sometimes if you walked into a financial advisor and said, I'm going to give this amount, they're looking at you like, that's not a good head decision. That's not rational.
Sure.
So then you just mentioned the heart.
Yep.
So how do you balance the head and the heart? Or how do you
we had somebody recently where our advisors and strategists came to the table. They reviewed everything, went through the processes, all the checks and balances, and said, this really doesn't financially make a whole lot of sense. And the giver said, do it anyway.
Wow.
And I love those stories because I actually think we see the flip side of that because we see that heart aspect. And oftentimes when we are gifted in business knowledge and we have the financial acumen and we understand the accounting behind it, sometimes I don't want to say easier because every act of giving is an act of faithfulness, right? Like anytime, whether it's for tax advantage or not, that is a seed that is planted. And so I don't want to discount that in any way.
Yeah, true.
But when it really starts to affect the heart work of the giver, I think about the verse that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will follow. Did I quote that right?
Yeah.
And I have to remember that oftentimes it starts with the head. Where our treasure is, our heart follows it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it may start with a 10%, I'm disciplined in my giving.
Yes.
Right?
Just a simple discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as the Lord grows in me and in my faith and understanding, and I don't want to necessarily oversimplify this, but what it comes down to, Christmas story, in this John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he
gave. Yeah.
That he gave. And as simple as that, for God so loved me that he gave. When I so love others, I become more Christ-like and I give.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're going to shut me up here because you won't let me sing your praises for long. I know that. But for some people, that's not finances. For some people, we're going to live within a limited amount our entire lives. That's okay. Right? But Pastor Perry, I've seen you open up your home to people. I've seen you open up your stage to people. I've seen you live a life that is open-handed, right? Yeah. And going, I want to give everything back to the Lord of what he has given me, right? Finances are just one very small
Well, you mentioned the 4 T's earlier.
Time,
talent, treasure, testimony.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the treasure, but not everybody has the treasure, the wealth.
Yep.
But they have a testimony, but they have time, but they have talent. And so that's what you're talking about now.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for some people, it is a very short, succinct conversation with the Lord where I have one giver where, she walked up to me last week and she said, Lord just told me I'm supposed to give $50,000 to this organization. What, she didn't even say an amount, but that's just how she operates, right? She's like, the Lord told me when he strikes things and it goes out. Right. Yeah. And I love that. For a lot of other people though, I think it's more common that it's a long conversation. Yeah. Right? Of laying awake at night with the Lord, of going, Lord, you've uniquely wired me. What is it that you've put on my heart? Yeah. What in my own experiences and my own testimony, right? Being that my dad passed away when I was 12, and my dad was such a pillar of just truth and God's word and our family. I have such a strong leaning to families and ministries that serve the fatherless, right? Because I know what it was like to have a father. And I know what it was like to not. Yes. Right. And so I think he's uniquely wired us in that way. My husband and I have had significant moments at church camp. And so like for us personally, that's one thing where we're like, don't ever bring up church camp without giving us an opportunity. We love sending kids to church camp. Yeah. Right.
Sponsor somebody that can't afford to go.
Absolutely.
Just
even if I
figure out
can't pay for the entirety of it,
Yep.
that God would choose to use us.
Yes.
Right. And so that's kind of, I spoke about this last week, but when I think about generosity and how God is so generous in everything that he gives to us, I think about the parable of the fishes and loaves. And I think about, Jesus in that moment, thinking about how Jesus represented God. We've read through Exodus. We know that God sustains people through manna in heaven if he wanted to. Jesus could have just called out to God and said, hey, manna now, 5 minutes, hungry, hours away from the big city, gonna need a Chick-fil-A drop stat, right? And yet, Luke tells us that he turned to the disciples and he said, why don't you do it? You do it, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's the ultimate generosity story, is when Jesus is going and God says to us, I can do this. I can do this. Don't need you for it.
I have this theory that the reason God's will is not done most of the time is because we're waiting on God and God's waiting on us.
Come on. And that's
like,
that.
Well, when God does this and God's sitting there like, well, when you do that, right? So Jesus goes and sits at the right hand of the Father.
Come on.
He ain't getting up off that throne and coming back down here and fixing all this stuff. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We are little Jesuses.
Yes.
Right? Christians.
Yep.
Little Christians, little Christ running around. And we're supposed to be, you've already said it early on, the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
How do you help people break through the fear factor, though? Because like you said, it's most of the time. I think people, and it's just my theory, but I think most people, the more in tune and the more time they spend with the Holy Spirit, the easier it is to hear it and do it. Right? Just familiarity. Right? Early on, it's like, oh, I don't know, and then you have to navigate it. But the longer you go, the easier it is. Not for everybody, but for many people. How do you help people break through that fear factor that says, oh, man, here we go again. They're bringing up money. I want to give, but I don't have it to give. Or if I give, I'm not going to have anything to eat for the next 12 years of my life. I mean, it's like, right? The enemy blows up every negative thing that could happen.
Sure.
How would you advise somebody to say, here's 1 or 2 or 3 or 20 things that can help you overcome the fear factor of generosity?
Yeah, I think there's a two-sided
And we don't talk
point.
about a lot of these things, so we're just throwing
Yeah,
stuff
you're like,
at the
we'll
wall.
let her say the hard things. No, I totally
But
get it.
we're just kind of talking, and you don't have to have an answer.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you probably have seen people wrestle with this, and maybe even wrestle with it yourself.
I wrestle it with myself every day.
So how do you break?
I should flip the question on you and say, teacher, you are farther ahead than me. How do you? I mean, we both work in ministry.
We do.
And I could be wrong, but neither of us come from handed down wealth, third generation families.
No.
Right. And so there's a lot of, hey, I'm working hard, but more than anything, I want to please my Father.
Yes.
I want to do the will of my Father. And I don't mean that to, I do have an answer to that, what I would say. And I would say, I think it's a two-sided coin.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about generosity and stewardship. Those words aren't interchangeable. And I do think there is wisdom in financial stewardship.
That down. Stewardship and generosity is not the same word.
Yes. So stewardship is the handling of what God has given us with wisdom.
Yes.
Right. And so now I would say all day long, if you have heard the voice of God to say, hey, sell everything you have and go follow me, you ought to be doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, I think we have to start with our own finances to go. There are a large population that worship in churches every day who don't have a good handle on their day-to-day finances.
Yes.
Of just stewarding what they've been given
so true.
well.
I
Right?
don't know. I heard this number somewhere. Sorry. I'm
No,
interrupting
please.
you a lot, and I apologize. But
I talk so fast I don't even breathe, and then my face turns blue. So I appreciate the break.
But like us, maybe single digits of church attendees actually tithe.
What'd you say? How much?
A single digit percentage.
Oh yeah,
Like
I think
less
it's usually
than 10.
about. I think it's usually about 6%.
So then you have the others who give what I call there's a difference in a tithe and a tip. Mm-hmm. So they tip Jesus.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a 10 or a 20 or, whatever they have and whatever's left over. Mm-hmm. So you're saying build a strategy of stewardship into your everyday life. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Good stewardship means that I'm putting my values in front of my valuables.
Oh,
right.
Oh, man.
And so sometimes that means I just listened to a couple from church share their testimony and go, we weren't tithing. And what caused that fear was not because we didn't have things that God has given us to steward. It's because we weren't stewarding them well. Mm-hmm. We were living outside of our means. We were putting money on credit cards.
Yes.
And then when opportunities came to be generous, we found a ton of fear in our lives because we were living at or above our means. Yeah. Right. And that's not wisdom. That's not good stewardship.
Right.
And so I think really before you can be generous, you have to be a good steward. Mm-hmm. Right. Get some reps under your belt to just to live willy-nilly, to not live with boundaries and limits. Mm-hmm. And then, make a radical gift and say, God, I hope that you show up and then pay for my credit card bill this weekend. Yes. And God's like, just what you said. God's like, hold on, I'm doing my part and you're right.
So John Chris, the comedian, has this whole little bit that he does about, I'm not praying for that. Mm. And one of them is, his friend came to him and said, I really need you to help me pray that I can pay my credit card bill this month. And he's like, no.
That'll be a hard pass.
No, I ain't praying for that. He said, I'm not going to the God of the universe that's keeping the sun and the earth and all the planets and stars into motion and saying, this guy went over.
Would you help this guy sin well this week, Lord?
He bought a bunch of shoes he didn't need. He'd been out to eat what he just shouldn't have. And now I'm coming. No, he said, I ain't praying for that one.
Oh, man.
So.
I just shared this here recently, and I'll try not to take too much time on it, but I was shopping. This is a year ago, November 8th, 2024.
Oh, wow. We got a date.
We got a date. This is like my second salvation date, right? Salvation. I'm in Walmart, your place, right? And I see a dress for $7. And, I say I'm the generosity expert. I coach, teach, equip people on how to live generously, right? I have never been a big spender on clothes and shoes. Like I'm a pretty simple person, but not a big shopper, but I love a good bargain find. Mm-hmm. And I love finding things that I can change. It's like a creative outlet for me, right? Yeah. And so, and the Goodwill near my house is the best. So anyways, I see this dress and I just kind of feel like this rash on my heart from the Holy Spirit. That's you have probably 12 dresses in your closet. When is 13 going to be enough? Right. Wow. But I've always had kind of this reasoning in my head. Well, it's in the budget. Yeah. I'm not overspending.
It's $7.
It's $7. Yeah. You can't get dressed for $7 in one piece. Come on. I had every reason
this
to.
This is the will of God.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I'm
Lord
green light, right? And so, I really I brought it home and I begrudgingly put it in my closet. And again, I don't have this enormous closet, right? Yeah. But, I keep things pretty simple. I keep things rotating in and out. So I'm never hoarding things. But I really just felt like the Lord's saying, I want you to not buy any clothing for a year. And I was like, that's easy. Okay, Lord, that's so easy, right? And the first month I was like, my Amazon shopping cart is getting a little scarce, First month wasn't too hard. Second month, my team in the NFL isn't doing too great. I need to buy a new NFL sweater for right? I would be the person who'd go out and find something for a specific event or a speaking event or.
Because those people that's never seen you before need to see you in a new dress.
Yes. And I'm actually rescuing.
I get all of this, trust me.
I'm actually rescuing resources from the landfill. So it's not like I'm actually causing any harm in any way.
This is all good.
Right. But over the next 12 months, and I didn't buy anything, and what happened
You went 12 months.
Well, I do have to say this because I really believe in full honesty. There was a day where I was teaching a workshop. I spilled something on my white pants.
Well, okay.
And so I ran to, once again, Walmart.
Jesus understands this.
And I threw the dress away afterwards because I was like, I said I wouldn't, and now here we are, but I didn't have the time. It was the most ugly dress. Would have been better to just stand there
with the Stina. But it got you through that day.
Got me through the day.
I get it.
I was I want to be professional.
For the most part. Well, except for one moment.
And not only that, but what started wrecking me is that it started there. Yeah. And at anything I do, I started walking the line and go, okay, well, it's not going to be clothes, but I can still have accessories. right?
Yeah, there you go.
And I'll still buy home goods. And then every time I try to reach for something that was outside of my boundaries or my limits of what God gave me, it was like, yes, that's safe. And yes, you have my blessing. And yes, that's not outside of my plan for you. But I really just started going, but Lord, I can be so satisfied with what you gave me. And you're right. I don't need a new set of napkins just because I'm hosting again this year. Then the same napkins that I've been using do the job. Yeah. Right. And so I don't think I don't want to say hard and fast. I didn't buy any home goods. I didn't buy any jewelry, but I would say almost a year.
You were very aware, very aware. And that's that right there. I don't think God calls us many times, most times, to be like, all right, cut everything off.
Yeah.
I think all he really wants is when he does that, he's only doing that to make us aware.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of pay attention. Just pay attention to this. It's not that everybody has to say, I'll never drink another cup of coffee from Starbucks again, or I will never buy this piece. It's just God does these things to just make us aware. And
Absolutely.
That's what he was doing
a little
for you.
Wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
Just a little refreshing. And I'll tell you what, in such a simple way, and knowing that that was like a boundary for me for the last year, it saved so much time and energy in silly little ways that I never noticed, right? I would be strolling through Target and have to be there for something else, but I would always find myself moseying in other sections, right? I was just focused.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not bad things.
Right.
Right. But I go back to say living in freedom actually means living with boundaries. Freedom
Yes,
does
totally.
not exist.
You better believe it. I say
boundaries.
that often in a different way, but yes, you're exactly right.
And so I find, especially when it comes to finances, we have to find those boundaries for ourselves so we can operate in freedom, or else enough never becomes enough. It can be within budget. It can be without sin. It can be without, but we have to determine those boundaries for ourselves.
Yeah. So we're going to shift gears.
Yep.
All right. We're going to take a hard left, so don't get the whiplash.
Hard left.
So you mentioned earlier about the idea of, I think you may have used the word legacy. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about So Life Chapel and what we do has, we have a legacy account, if you will.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like for people that are trying to figure out not just what I'm giving now, but how do I give for the future? So one of the easiest ways they can do it is just to put it in their will.
Absolutely. Very, very simple, easy thing to do.
That's where I would go first, which is what Sharon and I have done. We put it in our will, but what are some other ways that that people can give past themselves? I don't know how else to say that. Past their life, beyond their...
Yeah, to build a lasting legacy.
Yeah.
So in the same way that you think about through some of those complex gifts like land, silver bars, pigs, real estate, business, all of those things that can be gifted.
The memory care homes.
Yeah, memory care homes, right?
Yeah, the story you just shared.
You know, we talked about the strategy before where if you gift those before you sell them, there's a strong tax advantage.
So again, there's the head decision.
Yep. And so that makes a lot more sense for you as the giver, but also for kingdom impact to the ministry that gets that gift.
Which is the heart piece.
Your tax write-off is greater because the value is higher if you give before you sell, right? When you think about that through legacy lens as well, some people maybe don't feel as secure in doing that. Maybe they have less in their hands that they own, that they're stewarding, right? And to go, hey, this does provide stability and income. And so this isn't something that I can gift right now. I actually rely on it for an income stream. A great way is to think about, okay, you have the biggest gift of your lifetime is the legacy gift that you make at the end of your life. Yes. And so most advisors would, unless they're really like a Christian spirit-filled advisor, and they certainly do exist. Yeah. The question is, if you've ever gone through estate planning, the question is, okay, who are your kids? You know, are we splitting this 3 ways, right? That's usually the common flow, right? And I think you have that one opportunity in your life to go, Lord, if all of this is yours, and it is,
everything
then where would you have it go?
Yep.
There are so many statistics that would share that passing on significant wealth to your children causes more harm than good.
Well, and I don't want you to lose your thought, but also people are living longer lives. which means they're dying in their 80s and 90s, which means their kids are in their 60s and 70s, and they're already retired and probably don't need the money.
Sure.
So why are we waiting till we die to give it to our kids? Create a legacy endowment. That's the word I was looking for.
Sure, an endowment. Yeah. Yep.
Create an endowment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Charitable gift annuity. I mean, there are all sort of creative ways that you can give to things that are advancing the kingdom now.
Yeah.
While you are here on earth. But, you do have that one opportunity where you go, okay, everything that has my name on it as owner, I say that in quotes because we know God's the real owner, right? I get that one decision. And you can do that through a legacy fund, right? Where you might go, for some ministries, it could potentially cause more harm than good to say, hey, to drop in $1 million. Could there's not the infrastructure to support that kind of gift. For a lot of ministries, there are, right? And so gifting it into an endowment or gifting it into a different legacy fund that maybe already exists. So I heard you share about the church. You already have a piece of that. It sounds like you already have a legacy fund. I would say, the easiest way, and you didn't ask me to do this. You're going to slap my hand after this.
I didn't ask you to do anything.
You didn't ask me to do anything.
Let's just talk about
I would say if you are giving to the church in any way, and you should be, that like the easiest way to give beyond your life is to name the church. Especially if you've been tithing, just like you and Pastor Sharon did. Like if you were already giving 10%, maybe God would ask you to give more.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there come a time when we change the will to say, you know what? We got 3 boys. Okay, we're going to do 25, 25, 25. We're going to do a quarter to each.
Yeah.
As God gives us the opportunity.
And it's just easier math that way.
You're exactly right.
Because 3 sons, because I know what that's like.
Exactly. That 33 and a third.
I'm like, which one do we love the most?
Exactly. Let's just round it up somewhere.
And so, that's a really, really easy way to make a huge kingdom impact. And what a beautiful way to leave that legacy behind.
Yeah.
But also let your pastor know, or your, whoever is on staff, let them know up front. So that way we can do a good job of stewarding and letting people know, hey, here's what God is doing, right? Here's how God is equipping us.
So if somebody wanted more information, they can email you, and that email is going to be down below.
Yeah. Okay. And so, also a lot of hats
I know you don't want, but you can refer like, hey, here's an advisor I know. Here's a foundation. Here's NCF. Here's all these
options. So at National
options.
Christian Foundation, obviously, we'd be happy to serve those complex asset gifts. As far as thinking through a legacy gift or an endowment gift, if you are a ministry looking to open an endowment fund, One Voice Foundation is going to be your best local bet as far as missional alignment goes.
Which is right here in Northwest Ohio.
Yes.
So it's local money that stays local.
Yeah. So primarily. A perfect example of that is there was a gal who didn't have any children, who was a medical director here locally, probably 20, maybe 30 years ago. She named One Voice Foundation as the beneficiary of her in a large portion of her estate. And so she launched an endowment fund, right? And I couldn't even tell you the amount. You probably may know better than I did. But each year, that endowment gifts out about $60,000 to $70,000 to nonprofits.
A lot of money for nonprofits
who are advancing the gospel
in our region.
Yes.
And it's about advancing the gospel.
So she was like, I care first and foremost about the gospel, which is why she planted it at One Voice Foundation. And then, she said, and second of all, because my life's work has been in medicine, I want it to benefit seniors receiving medical care, right? And so that's what, she is now long gone, but for probably 15, maybe not that many years, for several years, she has been, outliving her legacy through this gift.
Yeah. So One Voice Foundation is a great resource for if you want to do a legacy gift, or if you want to give into an endowment for your church, but again, that's where you start with your heart. Where's my heart? Okay, how do we do this? You go to your head, you go to the link below, you click down there, you reach out to Ashley, or you just go to One Voice Foundation. You go to National Christians Foundation, which is NCF.
Yep.
So there's a lot of ways. Give us. I know you've been here a while. and I don't want to wear you out. But
I'll talk all
give us
day.
some final words. If you could just kind of wrap this up and just kind of tie a bow on all of this, what would you say?
That's such a great question. You know, I think more than anything, what I feel like the Lord calls all of us to, and I know most of our conversation today was around financial and intentionally, because sometimes we miss those strategies and ways that can help impact the kingdom greater that we're unaware of. But I would say more than anything is just that my prayer would be that anybody who listens, is that we would just live out significant lives of surrender. Our entire life, the greatest gift that we've ever received as believers, all came through a generous act. What generous act is God trusting us with?
Yeah.
That is that
somebody's
obedient act to unlock healing in somebody,
Yeah.
to unlock a relationship with Jesus, right? You can even go back to, I think it was Joanna, Susanna, Mary Magdalene, who made significant sacrificial gifts that launched essentially the book of Acts,
Yeah.
right? And the advancement of the early church.
Yeah.
And so when I think about kingdom come, hear me say this. I'm in the generosity space, so I'm going to tell you we unlock revival with generosity, but I believe that with all my heart because we have seen those acts come before.
Yeah.
And that's not because we can stand on a stage and say, I gifted a ton of money. It's because we go, look what God trusted with us. We lived out our time, our talent, our treasure, and our testimony to live a significant life that points back to Him.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks for
joining
having
us.
me.
And for those of you that have joined us, thank you again. If you want to find out more about the Cultivated Life, you can go to the cultivatedlifeministries.com. Also, you can go to the other websites and the other opportunities down below. We'll drop all that there for you. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Before I leave, let me speak a blessing over you. Father, I just thank you for each and every individual that's taken the time to just process with us the idea of stewardship and generosity. And I just pray that you would bless, speak, let the head and the heart be engaged, and let us do everything you've called us to do so that when we lay down for that final rest, we can say there's nothing left. I did everything you asked me to do in Jesus' name. God bless you. I thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again real soon.